In today's show, we'll appreciate the greatness of Damian Lillard, plus talk Trailblazers draft picks in 2025 and beyond. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen and tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we'll appreciate the greatness of Damian Lillard. Dame, not a Portland Trailblazer, but one of the great Portland Trailblazers, and sustained a very serious injury. Tore his left Achilles on Sunday afternoon in the Bucks game against the Pacers, and we will appreciate Dame's greatness because he's now going to miss a considerable chunk of time at a point in his career when you don't want to be missing time, you want to be making plays. And then in the sort of inelegant way that we will, unfortunately enough, talk about the implications for the Bucks. They were already in trouble, and the Blazers have a bunch of their future picks, and missing Damian Lillard for an extended period of time into next season has implications for the Blazers, like actual basketball stuff. And then we'll take a couple spins on the Tankathon to close the show. But before we get into that inelegant transition, let's talk Damian Lillard. Dame is, at worst, depending on your personal opinion, the third best Trailblazer of all time. At worst, he's one of the three best Blazers to ever play. But I also have very intentionally, despite Dame's standing with the franchise and how long I covered him as a professional, my first year on the beat, in the building, was the playoffs in 2014. 6 games into me getting regular access to the Portland Trailblazers, Damian Lillard hit an iconic shot against the Houston Rockets so the Blazers could win their first playoff series in a decade and a half, and he would do that again 5 years later. Dude he was the king of making moments. I spent a lot of time around him in a professional setting. He made for some incredible basketball moments. But I have very intentionally not really talked about Dame or the Bucks or whatever because, one, this is Locked On Blazers. That's not my job. Locked On Bucks exists. They do a really good job over there. Shout out to Camille and gang. The beauty of working for the Locked On Podcast Network is that there's a show for every team, and Damian Lillard is not on the team that I cover. So over the last 2 years, I just basically haven't talked about him. Hasn't been something I covered. Watching him play in Milwaukee has always been watching him be something else. I don't think he's ever quite been Portland Trailblazers Damian Lillard while wearing that uniform. The first year was so rocky for him. He got traded late in the season, and he said he didn't have his normal, off-season routine. Plus, he was going through a messy divorce and relocating himself, but not his family, extended family, or children to Wisconsin. And yet, he averaged 24 and 7, made an All-Star team with the Bucks. And then this season, I don't think he looked like vintage Dame, but also like he's turned 34 last July, turned 34 in July again this year. But he averaged dang near 25 and 7, and shot north of 37%, almost 37.5% from three on freaking 9 attempts per game. He didn't look like himself, and he had 25 and 7 on above average shooting on high volume. Dude's good. But then he dealt with this deep vein thrombosis, this blood clot in his calf, and it caused him to miss a bunch of time to end the season. It felt like his season was in jeopardy then, right? And it felt like a real bummer because, the reporting, while the Bucks hadn't ruled him out for the season, the reporting is like, do people come back quickly from an injury like this? Is this a medical situation that people play again? And then Dame was going to play. Dame's going to play in the playoffs and give Milwaukee a chance. And obviously that the Bucks are a flawed team and an imperfect team and all those things, but I feel like you get Dame back on the court for the playoffs. You have Giannis Antetokounmpo. you can get there. Or at least you're going to have a chance against, say, a first-round opponent in the Indiana Pacers, a good team in their own right. Damian's first couple games didn't look like himself in Game 3, and then halfway through the first quarter in Game 4, with an offensive rebound coming off the rim, Dame took a lateral step back with his left foot, and as he tried to push off, kind of buckled. Got the ball, was able to slap it out to a teammate, I believe Gary Trent Jr., and eventually the Bucks missed, and Indiana went the other way with Damian Lillard unable to get up off the court, and your worst fears immediately come to mind. Oh no, I hope that's not what it might be. And as I was recording the show yesterday, I knew the news. It had been reported by Chris Haynes that it was likely a Achilles, and knowing what we know about Haynes and Dame, Chris wasn't going to get that one wrong. He was going to get it first, and he was going to get it right, and he was going to give the news you didn't want to hear. And so now Damian Lillard, he enters the first true era of uncertainty of his career. Everything about his career to this point has been certain and dictated by his terms. Damian Lillard's NBA debut, a 20-10 game against Kobe, Powell, Dwight, and the Steve Nash Lakers? Yeah, I'm here, dog. A unanimous MVP, an all-star in year 2, the aforementioned shot against Houston in 2014, and then when LaMarcus Aldridge left town the following season, Damian Lillard basically refused to let the Blazers tank. The front office had plans to be bad, hit the lottery, and the Damian Lillard-led Trailblazers won 44 games and made the second round of the playoffs. He dictated the terms, even when the other terms weren't supposed to be his. Right? Even when his co-star left and the franchise said, we just got to be bad. We just got to get down in the mud and climb back up. Dame said, we're good enough to hang in there. And it was perhaps, in some ways, the curse of competence. Damian Lillard was so good and dictated terms, the Blazers kept on trying to win forever. Never really dipped down and truly got in the pits. They didn't draft high in the Damian Lillard era because they won basketball games. He dictated the terms. And when his career was finally over here in Portland, his time was up, and the era really ended in earnest in the playoffs in 2021, but he was there beyond that. And when he really decided that was that for him, he tried to dictate the terms again. He said, I want to get traded, and I only want to get traded to one place. And it didn't work out that way. After a somewhat messy exit from Portland in the summer of 2023, he ended up in Milwaukee, where it wasn't uncertain because it was Damian Lillard, 24-7 All-Star, but he didn't look like himself. But there wasn't this total mystery about it. It was still if once he gets hold of this thing, like he has in the past, they'll be a little bit better. But him and Giannis didn't really ever gel that first year. Giannis wasn't healthy in the playoffs. They barely have played together postseason basketball. Their union has never been perfect. But it always felt like Dame was still mostly Damian Lillard. It didn't feel like that Sunday afternoon. Why I knew the news on Sunday and didn't talk about it in yesterday's show. I didn't mention that I didn't talk about it, but I didn't talk about it intentionally. I didn't really want it to be true. I wasn't ready for it. Even though I knew it was true. I knew in the moment. It looked bad. The type of injury that I'm not a medical professional, and probably neither are you, except for those of you who are listening to the program. I appreciate you. Thanks for keeping us healthy and safe. But I knew the deal. I didn't want to know the deal. Because I didn't want Dame to not be able to dictate his terms. I didn't want Dame not to be able to at least have a chance to grab the reins and say, come on, let's steer out of this. He has been so stubborn and determined to bring success to the Blazers in his career, and certainly I think would bring that same edge to Milwaukee, right? If we can just get healthy, we can do this. Giannis and Dame played, I believe, 3 games together, healthy in the playoffs. Imagine if they got 6. Imagine if they got 9, right? And got in, got a little further. But now Dame, who'll turn 35 in July. Shout out to our Cancer King. Will miss a big chunk of next season. And I think it's undeniable that an injury like this, at his age, with how many seasons he's played, 13 in the league, 9 of them at an all-star level, 7-time All-NBA. This is not the end for Damian Lillard. I'm certain of that. Certain of it. This isn't the end. First of all, he's under contract for 2 more seasons. So, he's literally employed by an NBA team. Second of all, Damian Lillard will not go out like this because he has always been one to dominate the script. That's why he grabs the microphone in the Moda Center and yells, "Rip City." It's why he invented the wrist tap. He likes to be the one who writes the script. It's why the second time he ended a playoff series, he didn't grab the mic, but he knew what to do. He waited around the court and dapped up everyone and let you roar and yell and sit with that incredible moment. He's the guy who dictates these moments, and I know that he will be back because he wants to dictate a few more moments. This could be the end of peak Dame, though, and I think that's the real sad part, is that this type of injury, this type in your career, you're just not likely to get back to your highest levels. Like I said, Dame has not looked like himself the past 2 seasons in Milwaukee, and he's a 25-7 guy. We will see what becomes of Dame, but we will see him play basketball again. No, it's not even a question for me. We might see him play basketball again in freaking January. Modern medicine is pretty spectacular. We should do our best to preserve it. But I do feel a sort of sense of loss that Damian Lillard doesn't get to write the script the way he wanted to. He deserved that. He deserves, dude's going to be probably a first ballot Hall of Famer. He deserved, or perhaps deserves, got nothing to do with it. But I had hoped that he would get to dictate the way this thing ended. Even if it didn't end in a championship or making the Eastern Conference Finals or any of that success, he would be on the court giving what he has to give. Because he's earned, as the quality of player that he is, the right to give what he has to give. So I'm bummed for that for Dame, that he doesn't get to be the one who writes the script. That for 10 to 14 months, depending on recovery timelines, as far as I understand Achilles returns, maybe 8 to 12 is actually probably more accurate. 8 to 12 months, he'll have to work his way back and then get his rhythm and then regain who he can be in at 35, playing year 14, coming off an injury like this. Stinks. Get well soon, bud. I mean, I hope we get to watch him play basketball, tap his wrists, hit deep threes, scowl at people, do what he does. Because he deserves to write us another chapter or 3. I mentioned the inelegant segue. That's what we're going to do here. The Bucks are in trouble because of this. Not only Damian Lillard's injury, but just the team isn't good. And there are some real basketball implications and stuff for their future and for that will very specifically impact the Trailblazers. Inelegantly, but respectfully, join me in that second segment. We'll talk about it. Before we get there, though, I want to tell you about Monarch Money. Do you ever look at your bank account and think like, where did my money go? Where hath it gone? Because, you're buying stuff online, you're going out and having fun, you're eating meals away from your home, and it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. It's not just a budgeting app. Monarch Money is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. And you don't have to juggle a bunch of different apps. You can have an all-in-one app that's going to track your spending and track your savings goals. Help you budget, not only for short-term minor budgets to, make sure you pay your bills on time, et cetera, but if you've got something that you want to buy down the line, you can, manage, you can plan long-term and short-term goals right in the same space on Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, and the code is LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right. The Bucks were in trouble even without Damian Lillard's injury. They're just a team that is not good enough, and they have employed one of the best players in the world. And that always makes for a dicey combination in the NBA. When you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is like the third best player on the planet or something like that. Certainly, for my money, third best player on the planet, but you could convince me he's as high as 2 and as bad as 5. But in any case, absolutely one of the best basketball players in the world, a singular force, someone who has been so consistently good over the last half decade that I think we do take how freaking good he is a little bit for granted. Particularly in the era of how good Nikola Jokic is. It's like, oh yeah, the other one too, like the other MVP one. He's incredible because Giannis is that. He's a dude, right? He is an all-time great. You're watching an all-time great player. And when you have an all-time great player on your team and you're just not quite good enough, the vultures come. In the NBA, the vultures come before you die. They do not wait for your franchise to keel over. They knock on your door when you look relatively healthy and say, we'll be back in a couple weeks. Hang on. Saw it here to some extent in Portland before Damian Lillard asked out, right? Is that the vultures would show up every summer and be like, now how can Damian Lillard play for the New York Knicks? And in the betting markets, the second most likely team that Giannis Antetokounmpo would play for, if he doesn't play for the Milwaukee Bucks next season, it's the freaking New York Knicks because the vultures are here. And somehow they're always sending him to Madison Square Garden. But the Bucks are in trouble in part because of going all in. They tried like heck to win around Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they were rewarded with one championship, and their swings to stretch out the window just failed. I don't think you can say that they didn't go for it in the Giannis era. If anything, they went too hard, right? They cashed it all in twice, basically. The Jrue Holiday trade was like a trade everything to get Jrue, and it worked. It worked. They won a title. Jrue Holiday was fantastic in the 2021 playoffs. Giannis was incredible, but they were just really stinking good, and Jrue was such a big part of that. And then they took another swing after a couple years when it looked like, okay, maybe we're out of the money. Traded everything else, including Jrue Holiday, to get Dame, right? They went for it twice. The thing that you have to do when you're the Bucks is you kind of have to nail a late round pick. That's like how if you are a championship level team, you have to kind of like win around the margins to extend your window. But I don't think some teams you could say didn't swing. I think the Bucks took big swings, and the second one just didn't work. I think that's exactly what you want your franchise to do. But the Bucks find themselves in a tough spot. They don't control any of their draft picks until 2031. None of them outright until 2031. And part of that is owed to the Portland Trail Blazers. They owe the Blazers a pick swap in 2028. The Blazers will have to have made the playoffs and conveyed their pick to the Bulls by then, or conveyed their pick to the Bulls in some other way in order to exercise that swap. But assuming the Blazers make the playoffs either in the spring of 2026 or 2027, they can exercise a swap with the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks owe a pick outright to the Blazers in 2029, although there are some part of the trade down the line as the Blazers will owe one of their 2029 picks. They have one from Boston and one from Milwaukee and their own to the Wizards. So conceivably it could be the Bucks pick. In 2030, another swap. This one currently unencumbered. The Blazers can exercise swap rights. If the Bucks finish with a higher pick, boom, boom, swap it, baby. The Blazers will get a higher pick. And if the Bucks are in a rebuild, if they're spiraling in a post-Giannis world, yeah, that's troublesome. And not only do they owe the Blazers picks, They own the New Orleans Pelicans picks too, because they traded for Drew Holiday. They traded all the picks for Drew Holiday. They traded all the picks for Dame. They're gone. They own an outright pick and a swap to New Orleans in 2026 and 2027. They're just out draft picks. They don't have anything left to fire in the trade markets. That's it. They're an aging team. They're an extremely expensive team. They're not quite athletic enough. They're not good enough on defense. And that was all going to be true if Damian Lillard was healthy. And now Dame's not healthy, and it complicates things. So many of you, a stunning number of you, have emailed me today about the Blazers trading for Giannis Antetokounmpo, and let's get into that. Just kidding. Let me just say this. No. For two reasons, two very obvious ones. One, if the Bucks do indeed move to trade Giannis Antetokounmpo, they will get a very, very, very aggressive trade package on the market because he's still really stinking good, and they will do the reverse Nico Harrison, and which means they will call every team and find out what it is. And Giannis will have some say of where he goes, and the Blazers, a combination of things. They do not have enough high-quality trade assets to put together a trade that would keep them competitive, wouldn't gut their assets and their young players in order to acquire Antetokounmpo. Giannis probably wouldn't want to come here because they'd be like a worse version of the Nuggets, who are not quite a clear inner circle championship level team, and so Blazers, competitive trade package, like Houston can just trump them. Conceivably, OKC, if they want to get in there, could trump them as well. Like there's just big, better packages. Utah, even if you're talking about like not very good teams, could trump the Blazers pretty quickly in terms of packages. The Blazers do indeed have some leverage over the Bucks because of these swaps and because of the outright pick owed to them in 2029. Get to that in a moment. But in addition, as I mentioned when I did the whole Zion episode, does it really make sense for the Blazers to hit the gas and like go all in on that level of player, like a championship level player with the roster they have now? No, they have to be patient. They have to build patiently. It doesn't really make sense to trade for Zion, but why it would make more sense is because the asking price would be much lower because Zion has all these risks and is like a dude who's only available for 38 games a year. Giannis is like one of the greats. He's not like multi-time all-star special talent when he's healthy. He's one of the best players of all time. It's just a different thing. And so if you're the Bucks, you're asking for a package of the Blazers. If they were to match, say, you can have all your picks back and we'll throw in ours in the future, it either guts the Blazers of their assets, plus you'd say like, okay, well, also we're going to need Shaedon Sharpe and et cetera, et cetera. There's no world in which the Blazers can just trade like their older expiring vets and the picks back for Giannis. That just is not realistic. But here's where the Blazers' leverage could matter. If the Bucks do go into a rebuild and the Blazers are controllers of their picks, there is a world in which the Bucks, as a part of a larger trade, redirect some assets to the Blazers in order to basically buy back their ability to tank. Say, take the swap off in 2028, take the swap off in 2030, and for your troubles, we'll give you a really good young player to facilitate your immediate needs to get better. This is the way the Blazers get involved in the Bucks' demise. It is not trading for Giannis Antetokounmpo. It is specifically leveraging the Bucks, who, if they do go into a rebuild, one of the things you need when you're rebuilding is your own picks back, so you control your own destiny when you lose, and you're not just kind of stuck in the middle. If the Bucks don't do that, if they don't control their picks, they're probably not going to have much incentive to tank, which actually lowers the Blazers, the value of these Blazers' future draft picks. So that's the trick. The Blazers need to get in. If there is a teardown, if there is a trade everybody and blah, 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 the Blazers need to get in as a third team or as a secondary trade on the backside, depending on how it's structured. Say, hey, Milwaukee, we'll give you your picks back, but that awesome pick you just got in 2026, well, we need that. You can have your own. Or that awesome young player, that Jabari Smith Jr., Reed Shepard, Cam Whitmore combination you got, well, you're going to have to send us two of those, and we'll give you the swaps back into the future to make it happen, right? That's how the Blazers leverage this. That's how they get involved, because the Bucks will want to buy back their ability to tank. That if you're looking for the way the Blazers get involved, that's it. It ain't getting Giannis. It's not realistic for so many reasons, including the practicality of how the Blazers are preaching they want to do this. It's not time to hit the gas, and it's certainly not time to hit the gas on one of the most expensive trade parts. Okay, let's talk about the future draft picks. Let's play Tankathon. Join me in that third segment. We'll close the show, and we'll take a spin on the mighty Tankathon machine. Join me there, won't ya? First, though, let's talk WayFair. Spring is here. means it's home project season. Whether you're refreshing a room or tackling a full renovation, WayFair is the best kept secret for all things home improvement. From small updates like a stylish cabinet or the stylish cabinet hardware, say you want to add some gold to your life, to major upgrades like new vanity sinks or outdoor lighting, WayFair has quality products for every budget. I am in the process of making some minor and medium-size upgrades to my home, and I recently went over to WayFair.com and got a small little couch for my 2-year-old to sit on in her bedroom because the furniture she has now doesn't work for her. So shout out to WayFair for the small couch that fits a 2-year-old a little bit better. Shopping is easy, and you can find what you need to fit your spaces and your style, even if your spaces and style are not a 2-year-old's bedroom. WayFair makes home improvement easy. Get started now at WayFair.com. That's WayFair.com. WayFair, every style, every home. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. What we're going to do to close the show here is take a little spin on the Tankathon. We're probably going to take 2 spins on the Tankathon, quite frankly. One of the sort of paths, talking about how the Blazers, get involved this summer and get the Bucks picks back, right, is what do they do with this pick? I think there is, the overwhelmingly likely chances that they finish 10th. We'll take a spin on that in a second and talk about what would 10th look like. But I also think there's a world in which the Blazers decide some other options. But let's take a spin first and talk about what those options might look like. Join me over on the Tankathon machine. If you're listening on the audio, I'll walk you through it. I'm hitting the sim button. We're simulating the lottery and the Blazers with a 16.9% chance at the top 4 pick and a 3.7% chance at drafting number 1 overall land in 10th. They don't go anywhere. Washington wins. Toronto jumps into the top 5. Everybody else drops down, including Utah, to 4. Bow, bow, bow. So this is a pretty interesting one for me because one of the challenges with the Blazers right now is they don't have a specific need, right? They got a point guard of the future. They got a shooting guard of the future. They got 2 forwards of the future. They got the center of the future. Plus, they have vets to depth either in front or behind those gentlemen, and DeAndre Ayton and Jeremy Grant and Anthony Simons. And you can say, well, just trade those dudes. But you're going to get back players in those trades. In a perfect world, you get back players that are more comfortable coming off the bench but are still effective. So you could play your young guys and have vets that come off the bench and be relatively competitive, but have some sort of some of the politics and paycheck stuff a little bit cleaner sorted out. But it's not in general, the Blazers do not have this sort of glaring need. So you don't look at the draft and say okay, well, they need a forward. I think they could use some point guard depth in theory, but I don't know that matters at 10. I think they could use some more shooting for sure. So that would, if you can find that, sure, great, go get it. They could use some more playmaking, sure, go. But they got to draft best player available. But there is a world in which 10 has some value in the trade markets. I think once we get a little bit closer and once that pick is already finalized, whether the Blazers should or should not trade that is actually a little more closer for debate because, we'll see more, by the time you get to the middle of May, much less June, teams will flame out of the playoffs. Teams will, things will go north and south for teams. And I think what they need and how you could maybe package that pick. I'm not in favor of that necessarily. I don't think it's personally a great idea, but I do think it is a situation to monitor due to the Blazers. They don't have a very specific need necessarily. In my opinion, just make the pick, even if it lands at 10. But I think there's a world in which it helps facilitate some things down the line. Let's take one more spin on the old Tankathon machine while we're here. We're spinning again over on the Tankathon machine, and the Blazers, they move up to 4. This is pretty fun. 4 is an interesting one. New Orleans 1. Toronto again jumps up to 2, 5 spots. Utah drops back to 3. Portland 4, and then everybody else falls in line. In this scenario, Oklahoma City gets the 7th pick in the NBA draft. Ooh, it's tough. So at 4, what do you do? This would be a fascinating spot, right? Because this is Ace Bailey could still be there at 4. There's a pretty good chance he falls. VJ Edgecombe, Trey Johnson, I think. Even Common Malawach, although I think because of America's political climate, his visa situation, and his just in general his entire status here in the U.S. is challenged. But like, he could be available. Do you draft a center at that high? I don't think you do. Jeremiah Fears would be on the board. Conkanipple, even though the 4 might be a reach, but like Edgecombe, Bailey, Trey Johnson is a really interesting one. I like VJ Edgecombe. I think he would be a really fun add to this group. Also fits kind of their style. A really good athlete who's a really good playmaker as a defensive player. He would be very, very intriguing for me. And then like the Blazers could use another sort of guard type, and if Edgecombe becomes, if the shooting is real for him, he becomes special. Ace Bailey has such a high upside, although I think he has a lot of outcomes where he is not very good, but I think his overall upside is really tantalizing. And Trey Johnson is just a bucket, but I think there's more to his game than just being a bucket. 4 is a fascinating one. You don't trade that pick, I'll tell you that. 4 is sort of that cusp where it's like, yeah, you might be getting like, this is like you're getting an all-star type, right? Like you're at least in the range where you have someone who has like all-star upside, I should say. Type is maybe too aggressive, but you are, as opposed to further down the draft where you're like, it could happen, but you're less likely to, particularly just like looking at a draft class and how it's going to shake out. But like at 4, you're right in that cusp of the excellent players. And that really, that would change the game. That is going to do it for today's episode. Come back for tomorrow's show. Tell your friends about the program. 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts. Also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.